What is going on? Is it... Am I live now? What the hell? Was I not live that whole fucking time? Dude. What is OBS, dude. I swear to God. Hello. It's me. I've only been talking to myself for the past 4 minutes. Hi. God. Cause I did, yeah, you see, okay, thank goodness. Dude, OBS has this really fun feature where sometimes, and I know that it has to do with how I set up the live streams on YouTube, and I need to like look at what's different, but sometimes if I set it up, it'll automatically go live when I just start sending the streams, which is how Critical Role is. But then other times, oh God, okay, music's loud. You need to turn that down a little bit. Sometimes I have to like then manually go in and like hit go live. It's a whole fucking thing. Anyways, hello. What's up? It's me. This book club's gonna be a weird one. I'll just repeat my spiel that I gave to my monitor. What up, Hans? What up, Remy? Don Schnee, what's up? Finally got a stream I can join. Ah, fair enough. I get you. Well, fun. I'm glad. Hashtag pre-recorded. Clearly. What up, Daniel? Yeah, no. Oh, hey, Big Ruckus. How you doing? What's up? Yeah, this has been a long time coming. It's been a while since the last book club because, like, the holidays, and then because I hadn't like set a date for the next one, I wanted to like make sure that people had enough time to plan for it. So now we're here. Hello. Yeah, no, this part was interesting, but I read a lot of it while I was sick, and then tried to like reread some of it. But there are some chapters where I have like entire books written in like my own novels. And then there's some where I have, like, absolutely nothing. And I looked back, and I'm like, I think that something happened during that chapter, but I didn't take any notes on it, so. Just here, drop a like, have fun. Oh, thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But, anyways, we're not doing a recap like last time. If you need a recap, there are chapter summaries on the fandom. And we're just gonna jump, I think, straight on into it. Very first thing, I think the interludes for this one, that were before this part, banged. I think they were so sick. Just getting a outsider's look at Shinobar, and just like generally, in the previous interludes, we got a very like unique geography with the Pure Lake, and now we're getting, I think, another very unique geography with Shinobar. And Shinobar and its characterization does help us understand Szeth a little bit more, which clearly Szeth is going to continue to be a major force in this series and in Roshar as a whole. No idea what the fuck is going on with his employers. I don't think we're like supposed to know. I don't think that this has been like crazy foreshadowed who is doing all of this. But yeah, so it was interesting to get the like Nospren Shinobar and like all of that characterization just to give us more info about Szeth, which was cool. And it's something that the Pure Lake didn't do. Like, it presented us with this really cool alternate biome, but it didn't tell us anything about our like existing characters. You know what I'm saying? So I think that the Shinobar section managed to do both, which was really cool. Also, fucking Interlude 5 just, like, tossed changelings. It's It's just like, oh yeah, Roshar wasn't weird enough already. Let's just throw in changelings, whatever. Let's just do it. It doesn't matter. Which is just so funny. There's grass and soil there. I know. Shinobar's weird. Well, and it makes like it's very cool, and it makes like sense that like, oh yeah, like mountains break storm fronts, and Shinobar is like surrounded by these giant mountains. And I mean, you know, the Shinobar, I feel like has been pretty distinctly classified as like, you know, Eastern like type people, like Asian people, and so it's very like reminiscent of like the Himalayan mountains. But yeah, it makes total sense. Like, oh yeah, they don't really worry about the high storms because the mountains break the storm wall. So very, very cool, very interesting. Pure Lake is more interesting if you know a lot of Cosmere background, which is fair. And to be clear, I thought that the Pure Lake was sick. This is not a condemnation of the Pure Lake. This is more, I think both of the biomes were interesting and like told us interesting things about other areas of Roshar. And Shinobar also told us things about Szeth just by like process of him being from there. Like if one of the Bridge 4 crew had like been from the Pure Lake might have been like just that tiny bit more interesting. But yeah, so then we went into changelings just straight up, and like all of the different type of spread, and we talked. It like the spread were a weird, not like a focus of this part, but they like really like dipped down into it, like pretty consistently throughout this entire part of like talking about the spread more. And it really started off with being like, oh yeah, there are just unique Spren. There are no Spren in Shinobar. Like, it seems like Spren are very distinctly related to lands and peoples and cultures, and that they're not just everywhere, which is interesting, you know. And the like fully unique Spren that I don't remember what the changeling's name was. I didn't write it down. But whatever the unique one that's like the big like fucking whale thing that like sprouts out of the ocean once a day is very interesting. Almost like gives me the vibe of like a Gestalt consciousness, like a hive mind. Or not a hive mind explicitly, but like this like Spren that Axies. Gotcha. Or Axius? Yeah. It seems like this Spren is a construct of the people of Eerie. And like not just in like me assuming that, just like in like it has all these fucking faces on it. Like it feels like those are either people that have died, or like he talks about how like when people look at it, it makes them tired. So it seems like maybe it's like absorbing people somehow, and like that's like the whole faces thing. Very interesting, and really like leans into my theory that Spren are some sort of spirits or like ghosts. Bird, later you just went. I know you're sad. Paige just left right before stream, and Bird is very sad. It's okay. But yeah. So that was all very interesting. And then we went into 29 with Shallan and Jasnah, and it is them talking a little bit more like in depth about Jasnah's atheism and Shallan's theism. And this whole dynamic between them of like the theism atheism stuff is interesting. Only because, and the thing that is interesting about it to me is it is a theist and an atheist being written by a theist. Like, Brandon Sanderson is Mormon. He's very explicitly a theist. And he is writing about two people that hold these opposing beliefs, one of which he holds. And they're both supposed to be very clever. And that is like this weird, I don't want to say like writer's trap, But when you describe someone as, like, oh, so clever, it then makes any argument that they have that little bit of, like, extra weight and scrutiny. Like, Yasna can't make a bad argument because she is, like, narrated as, like, not making bad arguments. So then, if Brandon Sanderson, the theist, like, makes a bad atheist argument because he's a theist, it then, like, discredits Yasna's character, and, like, it is like contradicted. Now, I don't think that happened, but it's this weird, like, tension within the writing of, because this character is, like, super smart, super clever, like, the writer has to be, like, very careful with how they characterize it. And it like was really tipping me off during, not tipping me off, but like it was very top of mind for me during chapter 29, because Taravangian, the king, has, like, some debates with Yasna about it, and, like, Shallan is very explicitly like, oh yeah, Taravangian is trash at arguing. Which, like, implies that Shallan thinks she could do better, and that there are things that, like he's not, like, hitting back on Yasna for. So it's all, like, very interesting. And there's an extra layer of interest when we, like, pretty explicitly know that the Almighty does exist. And that Yasna's just, like, straight up wrong. So, it's this very interesting dichotomy that I think has a lot of, like, application to D&D, and, like, how you handle atheism in a story where, like, they're wrong, like, just, like, provably. And, like, especially in, like, D&D, there's, like, a whole godly pantheon. I think that Yasna is a very interesting case where, like, all in all, I was like, looking out for this tension. I think Brandon handled it pretty well, like, across the chapters. But it is, like, this ever-present source of, like, I feel like tension, especially because Yasna's not our POV character. And we know that God is real in this context. So we're, like, constantly knowing that Yasna is wrong, but Yasna, because of her other characterization, can't argue incorrectly. It's very weird. It's an odd tension. Okay. Chapter 30. I thought it was really cool. This is the one and only. When I read this, I was like, oh, this is going to be a more consistent thing. One and only chapter where Gaz is a POV character. Which just, like, came out of nowhere for me, but I thought was so cool. I took a bunch of notes about it, so I'm just going to, like, read some of them. Making Gaz a POV character instantly makes him more sympathetic. No matter what he does, from now on, it will always be cut by the fact that we have literally seen the world through his eyes. Or, eye. Bird? Bird later. Gosh. Yeah. So, through the world through his eyes or eye. Speaking of, the description of his lost eye was really cool. The description of the darkness scuttling away, and, like, Gaz's feeling that that there's something that, like, others couldn't see, or could see, but he couldn't. Like, I think it was very evocative and interesting for, like, for the description of his character up to this point. Like, the description of this, like, kind of paranoid dickhead. Like, I thought it was super, super interesting, the way that Gaz was described this whole time. I'm also making sure that it seems like people might be a little bit behind. Are we on? Oh, we're on normal latency? Oh, no. Fuck, so you guys are, like, really behind. Shit. Okay, so it seems like the stream is actually really behind because the latency is set wrong. So I might be responding much later than I normally do. That sucks. Whatever. I think in plays like D&D or this, being atheist should be more, I choose not to pray to any of the gods. That's not atheism. I mean, yeah, no, that's just not, yeah. Because there are no gods doesn't make much sense unless you're arguing them to be not actually gods, but something else. Maybe. There's also, I mean, people have gone over things. So in like Stormlight Archives, there is not absolute proof of the Almighty. Like, Kaladin, a very normal person, is like, oh yeah, my mom believed, and like my dad was into it. I don't know about me. Like, there's not like absolute proof of the Almighty. There's absolute proof to us because we've been in Dalinar's head and Kaladin's head, which we'll get to later, as they like literally talk to deities. But in like the D&D pantheon, you know, gods aren't running around doing crazy shit all the time. The most evident like proof of gods in D&D is like things like clerics, or you know, maybe like warlocks, depending on what kind of atheism we're talking about. But like, you as an atheist could just say like, yeah, like I acknowledge the deeds of the clerics, and I believe that they believe that their power comes from gods, but I don't think that it is gods that they are getting their power from. Because like, on the flip side of that, we have paladins and druids, who get their sources of power, and sorcerers and wizards. Like, there are so many sources of power that are non-divine that it would be very easy to argue as a person in a D&D world that the clerics are just mistaken about where they're getting their power from, you know? And that whatever the actual source of their power is just like non-divine. Certainly depends on the setting, and depends on like how like ingratiated your gods are within your world, but it's very possible to have atheists in like the true sense of the word within D&D settings. Let's see. 48 minutes after right now. Wait, what? 48 minutes after. I've only been going for 19 minutes. What are we talking about? Anyways, I liked the darkness idea of the lost eye. Having had a time in my life where moving my head made me dizzy, I would sort of see things out of my eye but couldn't tell what it was. Yeah. I mean, and so, yeah, moving back to the Gaz stuff, like, I loved the description of his lost eye and like the paranoia that he feels. It felt so right for every way that we have interacted with him in the past. And I like that this chapter and like this POV section really reinforced Gaz's greed. Like, it always pained him to part with money. And I liked the additional factor that there was something going on with Lamoral. Like, it solidifies even more why Gaz hasn't turned against Cal. Because before, I was talking about how, like, it makes sense that Gaz hasn't turned against Cal because of his greed. Like, he went out in the High Storms to infuse his spheres. That is something that has been, like, established, that is, like, risky, and, like, greedy people do. And so we reinforce it even more, and we see, okay, yeah, he's greedy, but he also needs the money for an entirely separate motivation of Lamrol's blackmailing him. So it gave us a lot of reason to, you know, continue to generally distrust Gaz, but also really, like, solidify why he hasn't turned on Cal. And, like, why this, like, pittance of a sphere count is enough to keep him in line. I loved it. Loved the entire thing. Okay. Oh, so then later in this chapter, we then go back to Kaladin. So last time, I had a whole bit about, like, the rule of threes and reminders right after we find out information. There's actually a super similar moment to what I was talking about here, where Kaladin narrates how he still doesn't understand why they won't let Bridgman carry shields. Right after that, Gaz answered that question, like, earlier in Chapter 30. However, this moment is distinctly different because Kaladin has already narrated this several times in his internal monologue. So, like, before in part 2, I was saying that some of the internal monologue felt contrived to narrate things to the audience or to remind the audience of things. But in this case, it doesn't feel like something that has been it doesn't feel like it. It hasn't been something that has been contrivedly like hidden within his internal monologue. He has narrated this before. Why won't they let us carry shields? And now we are just being reminded that this is something that has been on his mind. So he's thought about it before, and before the audience knew the answer, it's okay for him to think about it now. All that said, while it's okay here, I still don't like it unless there's something it will be directly related to soon, like Kaladin trying to craft them their own shields or something. It was very directly related to something. And I literally, in my notes, I was like, oh, lol, they immediately related it after I unpaused. The whole shield business was a great example of the rule of threes, where the explanation is actually the middle reminder. So Kaladin has thought about it before. We're reminded of the issue when Gaz explains things of this is why, Bridgman can't carry shields. And then the knowledge is paid off with Kaladin researching the side carry and looking into creating their own shields. If we hadn't gotten the Gaz lines, it could have been a bit out of nowhere. And it might have been hard for us as an audience to fully invest with the Bridgemen on like why they need these shields. Obviously, if we're being very empathetic, they're fucking dying. That's why they need the shields. But the Gaz stuff and the explanation of why they can't have it brings us more into that mindset and gets us more on the same page of like the desperation of the shieldmen or of the Bridgemen of, hey, they are bait. And then we come back to the Bridgemen and they're like, why do we feel like bait? And it's like, oh, because you are. But yeah. And the Gaz lines felt fine because the entire conversation was about how they didn't understand their place. It makes sense for these like thoughts to crop up in that specific context. So yeah, I thought chapter 30 was awesome. I also wrote down beforehand, which I'm glad it was this way. I'm really hopeful that the side carry goes poorly. Protagonists having groundbreaking ideas that holy shit no one ever thought of, and it works perfectly fine without any errors. Like, kind of sucks. I don't think it should be, like, a total disaster, but I am hoping that there are consequences that Kaladin just didn't foresee. Oh boy, were there. He's clever, but not omnipotent, and too often they can be the same thing in fiction. Cough, cough, Sherlock, cough, cough. Oh boy, did the side carry go poorly. Oh boy, oh boy. Hooray for book club. Woo! What's up, AKL? How you doing? I'll be around for the first bit, busy, so listening to you in the background. Cool. Well, welcome. Also, many people who break out of cults have a transitional period where they are already not believing in religion anymore, but in the back of their head, it's still going. I think that is in reference to like the Yasna stuff. Where there are not, but in the back of their head, it's still going. Okay. I think I understand where they have to choose not to pray to a god and they are still atheists. Oh, I think I kind of understand what you're saying. Of like they are having to actively choose it like out of like habit almost. Okay. I mean, yeah, fair enough. What do you mean? It worked great for Bridge 4. It worked so well for Bridge 4. Oh man, I loved that chapter. We'll get to that. But yeah. Okay. 33. Oh yeah, I don't think I mentioned this because I think that the impossible figures were like in an earlier chapter. I think Shallan's impossible figures at this point, at least in the reading, and like I'm really debating on the symbol heads because at this point we know they're whatever Shallan calls them, the symbol heads. But at this point we didn't know that. I think they are. I think they have to be related to like two things. One, whatever organization her dad was a part of. I have a feeling that like the organization is going to like drop off a letter, or they're gonna have like a medallion on or something that is the same symbol from the symbol heads. Maybe not. I don't know, but I think they're related. And two, it has to do with their photographic memory and drawing skills, which I mean, like very directly confirmed. But I think that like her photographic memory, I don't know, is like somehow peering into like another dimension. I have no idea. But like they are obviously, it is what she is using to see them in the first place. But I think that like they are like a source of it or something. I don't know. But in regard, oh yeah, dude. Okay, I'm gonna warn you guys. I got really sour on Shallan this part. I got really sour. And chapter 33 is where it started. We found out later there were multiple symbol types too, just to note. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Because it's also like, they're using the classic like impossible geometry, like, so it's implying that they're like fourth dimensional beings or something. Could be Spren related, could be like in the same way like these are like representations of Spren. I don't know, it's weird. Or maybe like related to the 10 essences. I don't feel like I know enough about the symbol heads yet to like really postulate on what they are. But they're very interesting. Anyways, in regards to this chapter, this is just what I wrote down. Maybe the reason Yasa's being weird about the Fabrial while you're around is because you're drawing pictures of her using it and storing the evidence. Like, I get why she's doing it, but when you have a superpower memory, why risk putting it on paper? I know that she like loves to draw and like drawing like gets the memory out of her head or whatever, but like just keep the memories in your head. No one can look in there. People can look at your portfolio, dude. Also, okay, so this is where we start talking about one of my big issues with this part and with Shallan. Like, this comes back to Shallan's just, to me, incredulous degree of naivete. Like, when Jasnah asked her to go and get, like, some certain books in this chapter that are, like, it's like Shadows Lost or something. It's like a collection of folk tales. Shallan cannot imagine a single fucking reason that someone whose main, like, job description is to discern historical truths from, like, various accounts. Like, to put all these accounts together and to try to discern the truth of the past. She cannot imagine a fucking reason that someone like that might be interested in dark-eyed bedtime stories. Like, I understand. She's a Light Eyes. She looks down on Dark Eyes, whatever, but like, I don't know. It kind of strains my disbelief on how thick Shallan can possibly be. When she is described as being so clever the rest of the time. That's the thing that strains my belief so much, is that she is described as being like so witty and clever, and she does not slow down to think for a moment about like why Jasnah might for some reason foreseeably want this. I don't know. It's just crazy, man. Yeah, I was thrown off every time she crumpled a drawing and left it at that too. Like, crumpling paper doesn't destroy a drawing. Yeah, she did burn them most of the time. So like, I think most of the time it was like crumple and then burn. And so then after that, when she crumpled it, I just kind of assumed that she was burning it. But also like, yeah, I don't know. Like, too smart for her own good. Yeah, I guess she's like the definition of like super high int, super low whiz. But like, even that, I'm like, the way that she is described as like talking does not ring of like a like very smart person who just doesn't understand like, I don't know. And we'll get into it more. I have more notes on Shallan this time around, but I don't know. I also believe this was the second time that she has internally voiced incredulity at Parshman fighting. I think, and this is, I think, what really bothers me, is her, like, dismissiveness contrasted with her, like, voracious search for knowledge. I think that's the thing that is, like, really, like, weird in my brain with Shallan, of, like, it is constantly talking about like how much she wants to learn, how much she wants to study, how she knows that she has so much more to learn. With her then absolutely dismissing things that like don't immediately make sense to her. I don't know. Maybe it'll like come into its own a little bit more, but it did not this chapter for me. The like just the two characterizations seem in very extreme tension for me and not in a good way. But yeah. Anyways, 34. I didn't take any notes on. Maybe I was too sick. Maybe nothing just caught my eye. I don't know. So this was the Storm chapter, and honestly, at first I was pretty meh on like the description of like being inside of the storm. Might be the common problem with not so smart people trying to write a smart people, or like someone who is smart in a very different area from the character they are writing. And that is always the risk of writing characters where you tell the audience that they are something. I talked about this a lot in part 1's book club of like when like talking about how hot Yasna is. They were like, yeah, Yasna's super hot. And then they go on to individually describe like the individual characteristics, which is like, oh no, because that's like a falsifiability thing. It's like, if you describe Yasna and I don't find her hot now, but it's a plot point that she is hot, now we're in dissonance. And that's like the same thing with like describing someone as witty or funny or like any of these things. That is like a very dangerous thing. Like you can just describe the things that someone thinks and says, and I can imply how smart or witty or clever they are. But then something like this doesn't like fall into that falsifiability trap. I also just think that Brandon has managed to write intelligent characters who aren't total dumbasses. I think it's just a problem with Shallan. Honestly, I don't really know. I don't know what the exact problem is. Like maybe he wants to have certain things certain ways, or like if Shallan was as clever as she is described, she might come upon truths too quickly. I don't know. But to be honest, I know a couple of people who feel similar to that. It didn't feel unrealistic, but it did feel weird that it was someone Yasna would hold in high esteem. That's kind of, yeah. I think that's the overall, like, I don't know. I'll leave this one there because I have more to talk about with Shallan later that might not evaluate, but like go into my point more then. Yasna is super hot, yeah, but it's a plot point that Yasna is super hot, and then they describe all of the hotness, and yeah, she's still super hot, but she might not be to some people. And if it's a plot point that she's supposed to be super hot, but she's not really your cup of tea as a reader, that is now like unintended and like not good dissonance. So that's the thing, right? You can have a character say they are smart, hot, funny, but putting it as the narrator saying it is weird. That is kind of what I'm getting at, Remy. But I think one of the problems is when a character outside of the POV character says it, or the POV character says it out loud. That's one thing. But when we are inside of a POV character's head, anything that they think is automatically like given a lot more weight within the narrative because we are seeing the world through their eyes. Like they are the descriptors of reality to us. And so when Shallan is like, damn, Yasna's super fucking smoke show, like that is this very like almost objective reality. And then even when Shallan is remembering her childhood and remembering how like people say that she's like a fucking writing or drawing prodigy, we take that as reality. Theoretically, when she is remembering her childhood and talking about how like she was a drawing prodigy in her childhood, that is theoretically tainted by her memory of it, which is not objective and like could be taken with a grain of salt. But because she's the POV character and because of how it's written, it feels very objective. I'm not questioning whether or not she was a drawing prodigy. I'm taking that as fact. And so that's, I think, the sort of trap that you can get into there. During my first attempt at this book, I found Shallan very annoying, but I've been enjoying her chapters a lot more this time around. Can't articulate why. Woof. I find her very annoying. We'll see. Well, yeah, we'll get into that later. But woof, yeah, I find her extremely annoying. I'm Demi-Ace if I don't like her personality. She's not hot. I mean, fair enough. Yeah. So I mean, that is sort of the thing. Is it's like, you know, and I'm sure that for you are used to those sorts of dissonances in media. But it is very much a trap of like, yeah, if Yasuo's a huge asshole and I'm Demi-Ace, she's not hot. And then if it's a plot point that she's hot, it's like, fuck, like, I don't get it. And that's de-investing you from the story because like you can't invest in that aspect of it. Anyways, Sam Akale, her character is complicated, but being annoyed, but her especially early on is understandable. Ooh, I would say my annoyance grew as it went. But I am hopeful for the future with her. I am not totally out on her yet. As someone who grew up a bit sheltered and always considered very smart, I can understand Shallan. I miss a lot of things spoken to me because I'm already thinking of the next thing. I'm not talking about her like social awkwardness or acuity. I think it's the dismissiveness, and I characterize that a little bit more later. But yeah, but we'll move on. Anyways, so in 35, I was a little meh on the description of the storm. Like, the experience is going to be like very mystical for the Bridgeman. I feel like, I don't know, this anchored it a bit too much in reality for us. But also, there's very clearly something up with the big ass face. So, you know, I suppose we needed it for that. But yeah, it felt, I don't know. It didn't feel like crazy it's really hard because it felt really dangerous, but it felt like very like real. It felt dangerous in the way that like, I don't know, like going on like a dirt bike is dangerous. You know what I'm saying? It didn't feel like, whoa, it's the high storm. It's the crazy unique thing about this world. But like also it is like just like a normal phenomenon to them. So maybe I was putting a little bit too much mysticism myself on the high storms, and maybe this is good for me, to sort of break my mythology on it. I don't know. Also, prediction. I predicted it straight up. It was very much confirmed, like, very quickly. But I said, Teft has been kind of vague about his life before. Like how Rock knew about Spren, I'm wondering if Teft is going to understand the significance of a Dun sphere after a storm. Oh my gosh, he does. Who could have predicted it? Okay. I have a big, long paragraph about 36. But hooray, yay, Kaladin Stormblast. He survived. Woo. It helps me that she is also narrated as naive. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, me going, why are you like this at writers, mostly men, constantly describing people as hot in their books. Yeah, fair enough. I tend to have a hard time with sheltered, naive characters in general. I 100% had the book smart, social dumb thing going on, but I was a lot more cynical from an early age and read everything. Yeah. I'm gonna zip my lip about that because I have more. So we'll talk about we will talk about it more. Having been in hurricanes and tornadoes, I loved the high storm description, and even as I'm saying it right now out loud, I think it was good for me. Because the high storm was, I think, a little bit too ooh, mystical in my brain. And it is a normal part of life for these people. It is very much just a thing. And I think I needed maybe my illusions on it broken a little bit. Even just sitting here thinking about it now. I didn't think that at the time. I was a little disappointed. But yeah, I don't know. Interesting. Which is a privilege speaking, of course, especially in Roshar context. I had full access to all kinds of books and movies, etc. Yes. Yep. We'll hit on it more. Okay. 36. I am confused on the difference between a Fabrial and a Soulcaster at this point. They then go on to very explicitly define it of Soulcasters are from before they figured out how to remake them. So now they can make Fabrials, and a Soulcaster is a Fabrial, but a Soulcaster is a from before times Fabrial is my current understanding. So yeah. I also thought it was a bit interesting. There was a very specific line where Jasnah is talking to Shallan about the devotaries, and she said that most devotaries silence the questions. It makes me think of the death rattles from part 1 and who might have been recording those death rattle entries. Because I've always thought it was one of the devotaries. And then later, Jasnah's hey, go look into the Devotary of Sincerity. They're pretty chill. So it makes me think that we will eventually start interacting with one of the devotaries more. That is maybe the ones that were recording the death rattles. Or the Stormlight archives. I don't know. We'll have to see. There's also a really interesting bit in the narrative description in this, because this is a chapter where they talk about going philosophy in action and going down to the alleyway, and then Jasnah fucking kills those dudes. Where it contrasts the atheism with belief. Shallan in when everything's happening, Shallan calls out to the Stormfather in her time of need, but it is Jasnah, the heretic, that saves her. Now, I thought that she was going to tell Kabsal about this later, and that Kabsal was going to be but the Stormfather uses everyone, and we are all part of the Stormfather, and so Jasnah, even though she's a heretic, is blah blah blah. Very classic theism argument that I thought we were going to see, and then we didn't. But the emotional impact on Shallan and the narrative weight of those words is still there, no matter what sort of philosophical argument you have about it later, which I thought was cool. Now, we're getting into another me complaining about Shallan bit. We did get a mystical moment in the middle of the storm, too. We did, Hans. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think I was, at the time I was too harsh on the storm. The more I think about it, the more I think it was actually exactly what I needed in that moment to demystify the storm a little bit. Even when there was a mystical moment in the middle. That's an interesting undertone of religion. Yeah, I thought that moment was awesome. Okay. Yep, let's complain about Shallan more. Okay. Maybe I'm being too harsh. I wrote that in the notes. But, again, I feel like her naivete, which you're right, has been pre-established. I feel like it's stretching me thin. Like, after all this, did I ever even know this woman? Like, from the way that everything has been described to me thus far, Light Eyes, especially Alethi, sound like murderous dickheads that hold the lives of Dark Eyes in general contempt. Shallan herself looks down on everything related to Dark Eyes and Parshendi. Like, the superiority of the Light Eyes is maybe one of the most well-established things in the lore yet. Then Jasnah kills a murder group, a street gang that doesn't just steal from people, that murders them. And Shallan's like agog. She is aghast. And I'm like, I don't know. I'll just finish reading my note. Regardless of the general description of Light Eyes, you have already been actively questioning Jasnah's atheistic morality, and she is described as an actively hard and cruel woman. Now, she has been also shown to be, like, caring, and we know that a lot of those hard and cruel things are exaggerated. I don't know, but, like, I get being surprised. I'm finished reading my note. I get being surprised and all, but again, Shallan's internal monologue really fucks with me. And I think that is, like, the thing that I would, like, that I, like, honed in on, is it sort of reminds me, I don't know if anyone has ever watched either, like, reviews or actually, like, read and watched the 50 Shades of Grey novel versus the movie. I've not read or seen them, but I watched Folding Ideas' whole review cycle on them. And it sort of reminds me of that, where, like, it is, like, talked about how, like, the main character in 50 Shades of Grey, Anastasia, is a much more, like, likable character in the movies just because you can't hear the words being said inside of her head. And that's sort of how I feel about Shallan, is it's like, if I didn't hear her in her own brain constantly being, like, surprised and confused by things, and could only hear the words that come out of her mouth, I would like her 1,000,000% more. I think, like, everything that she does and says feels right to me, but oh my god, her internal monologue just totally annoys the shit out of me. Also, I did think it was a bit funny that was like Jasnah is going to train Shallan to eventually have the courage to steal from her. Funny. Okay. Then we get to a point where I'm like, oh man, the internal monologue makes sense, but oh no, it's annoying for a separate reason. Like Shallan's whole, like, righteous indignation thing about, like, how dare Jasnah involve me in this? How dare Jasnah make me culpable? Like, okay, it made sense. I thought it was good characterization. It felt like something that Shallan would do and think. Unfortunately, it was just really fucking annoying to read. Like, it just, I don't know, to me it felt like kind of childish. And, like, now I'm just, like, at a point where I'm, like, annoyed at, like, any time I'm having to read her. which is not great. And it's like, I think you can really actively dislike an MC or a POV character. Like you can think that a POV character is annoying, but still have them be enjoyable to read. If anyone's read Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, I think that the priest POV character is a good example of that, of like someone that I did not like, but was very enjoyable to read. But yeah, man, I don't know. I'm just like starting to dread Shallan chapters at this point. I'm only like even partially interested because I'm really interested in like Yasna. Oh, excuse me. Really interested in like Yasna and the symbol heads, and in I'm a little interested in Kabzal, not really. I don't know. I'm just like, I don't. If I could have the chapter told from Yasna's perspective, oh my god, I would love it so much more. I don't know. Yeah, you and I would get along IRL, but we would never be text buddies because I inner monologue text ideas to my text buddies. I just hate texting in general. So probably. But it's not the problem of like having an inner monologue. Kaladin's inner monologue is fine. Every other POV character's inner monologue has been fine. It's just Shallan's that I don't like. Her inner monologue specifically and narrowly annoys the shit out of me. I do have a struggle with her monologue sometimes, definitely a bit childish. Though, to be fair, if you could hear people's inner monologues, you would probably be even more annoyed with a lot of real-life people, too. Fair. Fair? But I don't know. It's not good for a book, I think. No, mine is very similar to Shallan. Where you're just like constantly like, why would they do this? Oh gosh, sorry, I got a big. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And then, oh god, Alexa, dismiss. I don't know what's happening over there. It might be my brain injury, but I get Shallan a lot. Maybe. And maybe she is a character written for like a different type of person, but I don't know. I don't know. And I'll go into this because I don't just think it is the naivete and the surprise. It is a level of like superiority. Constant questioning, disbelief, and curious. I think the curious thing is something that I don't feel at all with Shallan. I think that's one of my problems, is she doesn't feel curious. She feels like constant questions and disbelief, which is okay. Like, I think that's the naive part. But then it is the immediate dismissal. It is the total lack of curiosity that I think is like an actual like issue when it comes to Shallan for me. And, like, even when she's talking about the emotions that she is feeling, like, I think a lot of it gets me because it feels at least partially rooted in, like, superiority. Like, she is constantly feeling like she knows better while actively narrating that she knows she doesn't. She is constantly thinking, like, Yasna is, like, weird or foolish for, like, the things that she makes, Shallan do, while also believing that Yasna is, like, one of the, like, most intelligent people alive. And, like, I don't know, just so many of her interactions, like, she reacts in ways that seem to just contradict other things we have been told about her. Like, it's not, like, fun dissonance. Like, I totally understand, like, being in constant surprise. Like, that is, like, a very classic, like naive plot thread, but for me, it is the total dismissal of like possibilities. Like, not even like disbelief on like how could that be a thing, of like, like why would Yasna ever want that? Like, I just don't get it. That's I think the place where I fall into on that. Is Branderson setting up a cheesy coming of age plot for her? I mean, to be fair, characters do need a place to travel, like emotionally within their plot arcs. So like, all of this does really set up a lot of really great opportunities for Shallan to grow and expand and like become a more curious person, and like open herself up a little bit more. Like all of this sets up huge potential for growth, which is very good and interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I struggle with superior feelings of people who are educated but are not smart, but I don't have the light eyes, dark eyes superiority. Yeah, and maybe that is one of the annoying feelings is like, I have a lot of flaws, but like, if we're talking about like who I'm more similar to, like, I have a bit of the Kaladin in me of like, if we're talking about like which of my personal life flaws are more similar to the character flaws, I am more on the side of like immediate dismissal of a person because of like them being like feeling superior or whatever, as opposed to immediate dismissal of a thing because it's like lower in status or whatever. Which I don't think either of those are really good sides of the coin, but like that is the side I lean more towards. So it might be why I find more ease in relating to Kaladin rather than Shallan in that case. But the contrast between her memories and monologue is what I find interesting about her character. I mean, I find a lot of things interesting about Shallan's character. Like, let's be very upfront. I find Shallan's character incredibly interesting. I just hate reading the words. Like, that's it. Like, I think the symbol heads are interesting. I think her drawing is interesting. I think her whole plot arc is interesting. But I just don't like listening to her. Yeah, just kind of leaning into her biases, like she doesn't know what bias is, which she should know better. Yeah. And, like, I can sort of get to the point where it's like, okay, she wants to be a scholar, but she doesn't even really know what scholarship truly is. And so that's part of it for her, like, her dismissal of philosophy. And maybe that's where I'm getting with this, is like, and what I need to like really sink in my mind is that she is described as being so clever, and she is described as like having this voracious appetite for knowledge, but like her naivete is to a point where she doesn't even really know what that means, like what a search for knowledge truly entails. Like her being like, why would I need to know about philosophy is to me like such an eye-rolly thing of like, dude, like, come on. What do you mean, why do you not need to know? That seems ridiculous that you would say that. But maybe I just need to like really sink it into my brain of like, she literally like, it's not even like she doesn't know what she doesn't know. I thought my dog was pooping, but she was just arching her back like a cat. Stretching, we're all good. I just need to like really sink into like, we are seeing it through her lens, and she thought she knew what she wanted, but in reality, she doesn't even know what those things mean that she wants. And I need to, like, rewire my brain to be like, she thinks she knows what, like, being a scholar is and, like, what being a learned person is, and she is really naturally talented in a lot of things. But even though she thinks that she knows those things, she doesn't. And that will impact everything. I'm still probably going to get annoyed by her, but I need to try to sink into that. And Jasnah does call out that childishness. Yeah. Oh, I think the most interesting thing with Shallan for me is she's been the least reliable narrator from the beginning. She is incredibly unreliable. That is very accurate. The only issue that I have with her unreliability is that you have to think about it. Like, it's not, like, overly obvious. And I think that's a great point to point out, but it's not something that I had like really like come to the top of my head of like that is like a very interesting facet of Shallan. When we know that she is actively hiding things from everyone around her, that there is so much that has happened to her past that we are not even getting peeks at. Like, we're diving into Kaladin's past and like why he is the way he is. But we have gotten several things foreshadowed about Shallan that we are not touching in the slightest. Like, they mentioned the shard blade that she has once in part 1 and once in part 3, and that is it. We have no... I think she killed her dad for it, and that her dad was a shard bearer, but, like, I'm not overly certain of that. Okay. Hey, dog, do you have to go outside? All right, we might need to take a bio break for the dog's sake. But then we will get back to it. But having her monologue, it seems like she often doesn't even think about several very important things for long periods of time, even if they're relevant. And I think that is one of the things that annoys me so much, is her just not thinking about things when she is described as being so clever. But maybe I just need to kind of think about like what her cleverness is, you know? And that might be a problem with me. And potentially, this is a good thing to take into account when you're writing, of your word choice can matter so much, of like what clever even means to people. Of like, I might just be thinking about her cleverness and like her natural intellect and whatever just wrong, because I have a different perception of like what that word even means than maybe Brandon does, or maybe a general audience does. So, with that to ponder, I will be right back. Bio break. Go get water. What up? I'm back. Oh, how we doing? Yeah, I was thinking about the more like unreliable narrator thing, and I think that's a really good, a really really good point. And I don't know if I just didn't pick up on it, or not to say I didn't pick up on it, but I it didn't really come to top of mind for me. But I think that's probably my own problem. I think I have a tendency to trust the POV characters a little bit too much. Mm. My God, the exposure on my camera is way too high. Um. Also, did I tell you guys that my heat went out last night? That was fun. That was especially fun. Oh yeah, that's it's a little bit better. The lighting's still weird. Um, it is. Let's see, weather in Chicago. Oh yeah, it's -3 out right now. -3 Fahrenheit. I don't know. Let's see it in Celsius. -19 Celsius. So that was cool. Thank God we live underground, and we have several like little mini space heaters. Like I have like a little desk heater that I just like use for my hands, and we just set those up in our room and piled in blankets and like put blankets like by the windows and it was fine. I actually woke up and it felt like a sauna in there. Because we, thank goodness have, those little personal heaters, but our power didn't go out. If our power had gone out, we actually do have a fireplace that we've never used. I don't know if you can see it. It's literally covered up by our couch. If I turn off this is a fireplace. I hate fireplaces. I've never used it. But I guess theoretically, if the power did go out, we do have a way to keep warm, which is nice. Yeah. But yeah, no, right now it's cool. It's nice in our house right now. Cause like the sun and again, like living underground keeps it a lot warmer. But yeah. We were in the low 20s last night in South Carolina. That's cold. Yeah, dude, below freezing, I feel like anywhere in like the southern half of the US is crazy. But anyways, what up, cheeky monkey? How you doing? You didn't get a notification? Dude, I don't know what was up with this stream. Streams are also weird where they will send out notifications when you both when you post them and when you go live. And I think what I've learned is if you post it too soon before you go live, but not technically right when you go live, then it like fucks with the notifications. The reason I didn't post it earlier, like normally I try to post it like several hours ahead of time, is because I was running late on making a thumbnail. The classic bane of me as a creator. I always have a hard time trying to discern if someone is meant to be an unreliable narrator or if it's just bad writing. I think that's my thing too, Remy. That's what I'm saying. Is it's like I feel like, and it's also like me. I feel like there's a third option of like, are they meant to be an unreliable narrator? Is it bad writing, or am I just not getting it? Which is like a very distinct possibility with this like whole Shallan thing. Is it's like, I hadn't really, maybe I just wasn't thinking about her cleverness, right? Like I had some like bias on like what clever even meant. Maybe I wasn't like picking up on her unreliability enough. Like there are just things that it's like, oh, maybe like as a reader, I wasn't getting. And to some extent, as a writer, you are like responsible for how your readers take it. But that's way more applicable in like this, like, a D&D type of sense than like when you're like a mass market writer, you're wanting to aim to where the majority of your audience gets it. If one Joe Schmo doesn't get it, then, whatever. And all that being said, I'm still interested enough to keep reading. So who knows how much that even matters. While he's gone, oh, what's up, Summer? I've never read these books. Should I stay and hang out or come back and watch the VODs to avoid spoilers? Yeah, depends on if you want spoilers. Do you want to read them or do you not? They're good books. But this is a very I mean, I don't do the recaps anymore, which was probably the most spoiler full part, but I'm not holding back on spoilers. If I hadn't read them, watched them, then read them, I don't think it would spoil things for me. Yeah. All my games today were canceled due to weather, so I want to feel company in the background vibes. I feel that. Yeah. I actually need to finish the last half of the last live stream. It was a long one. The last live was long. Yeah, but my best friend, it got negative 30 Fahrenheit in MT recently. Damn. It's supposed to get colder and colder and colder in Chicago, but the lake is like a lot warmer than the air apparently, so it's like it's not boiling, but it's like it's like getting like there was some phenomenon that I read about with the lake of like it's not freezing for some reason. I don't know. I have negative 8C and my heat also broke, and I'm in a roof apartment, and I live in a sleeping bag and 3 blankets. Yeah, dude, you would have to. That's crazy. Yeah. Because, I mean, at least you get, some of the heat coming up from below, but still, you're losing all of it to above you and, like, all around you. Yeah, that sucks. Keep warm. Yeah, please keep warm. It is one of the reasons my mom, because our fan that we had, like just like our area fan, was like really squeaky, and so for Christmas my mom got us this like Dyson thing. Here, let me show you. I don't know if you can see that right there. This thing. It is a fan, but it is also a space heater. So you can like set it on like 2 different modes, where like one of them is like a fan mode and one of them is like a heater mode. And I really like that, because then it like is like useful for like all types of climate control. Whereas like I feel like most of the time with fans, if it's too cold but you still like want like air movement, it's like hard to use a fan. Excuse me. So yeah, I like that guy a lot. I'm really glad we had that, because that I think is most of what kept us warm last night. We have hot springs near here that's really cool to see. When it's below freezing, the water comes out almost boiling hot. Oh, that's so sick. That's so cool. Oh, sending warm vibes. Warm vibes. All right. Anyways. 37. Fuck yeah, back to Kaladin, even though this is probably the chapter where Tian dies. I would way rather read that shit than listen to Shallan more. Damn, I was really being a hater. I think I was also really sick during this time, so I was really in my hater arc. And it wasn't even the chapter where Tian dies, because they didn't narrate that. But anyways, this is where we got more characterization of Spren. Which is really cool. I used to have one of those big electric air heaters, but it was from the 90s and broke. Yeah, I feel that. I have a lot of like old shitty appliances like that. Like I had a tea kettle that was the same thing. It was like an old electric tea kettle, and my mom got me same time as the Dyson. She was like, "Hey, here's a new electric tea kettle," and I was like, "I don't need the old one. Works fine, and the new one's better." Who would have guessed? Don't forget to stretch too if you're shoveling. When I was a massage therapist, the most common issue people got was from strain of lifting and twisting motion of shoveling snow. That's super interesting. I mean, fucking water's heavy and snow is solid water. So yeah, that makes sense to me. Oh, anyways. Okay, so in 37 we got more Spren shit of Spren appears when something changes, and that they are in the heart of all things. And that feels important, but I can't quite put my finger on like exactly what feels important about it. Like the whole like they're there when something changes. Like them just like being in all things is like, okay, it seems partially right, but also with the description of some places having unique Spren and like Shinobar having no Spren, We know that that's not exactly true, right? That they're not at the heart of all things. But spren appear when something changes feels really important to me. But like I said, I can't quite hone in on why. And then she was like, the pieces of your body have spren, but you don't have a spren, which like sort of makes sense with like rot spren, you know? But it also like, to me, it kind of implies like, okay, when rot spren appear, that is because your skin has spren in it. And then something changes and they change into rot spren to like signify the change. So like the air spren are not air spren until, or the wind spren. The wind spren are not wind spren until the wind comes by, and then they become wind spren. Which is sort of interesting because like Kaladin and crew talk about how like, spren only choose to appear to people. But what if spren are just nothing? They're just spren. Like they aren't wind spren, they aren't water spren, they aren't any particular type of spren until something happens and they change into those spren and appear to people. I don't know. There's something there. There's something in, like tangible there that I can't quite put my finger on. I don't know if anyone read Speaker for the Dead, but this description really reminded me of some of the metaphysics in that book. I did not read that, but I can see just from the title, I can see how that would remind you of some of the metaphysics in that book. Interesting. Yeah. So there was like I said, something going on there. Also, I don't know if it was called a common well or a common hole, but it was like the big hole in the middle of the town that collects rainwater. So sick. Very cool world building. Like, I don't know. It's just something so small and tiny, but it's like, oh yeah, they don't need a well. They dig a hole to catch rainwater. Like, it just, I don't know. It's just small little tidbits like that were like really fun for this world building. Also, the whole will they won't they of like is girl. Hi. She just gave a big yowl. She's a very vocal dog. Yes, you are, bird. You want to come and say hi? No. She does this thing where she can easily get onto the couch, but sometimes she likes to pretend that she can't so that I'll pick her up and put her on it. You can't get onto the couch. No, you're such a small dog that can't get onto the couch. Go by. Or do you just not want to be on the couch? Oh, okay. She also just sometimes doesn't want to be on it. All right. But yeah, like the whole like, is Cal gonna go into the military? Is he not? Like this whole part, I thought was really good. Like it ran the risk of like that, like will they, won't they? Runs the risk of feeling very like played out and contrived. It's a fine line you gotta walk because you have to like blue ball the audience like just enough to keep it interesting, but not so much that it's like frustrating to read. And I thought that. There's like something on my lip. I thought that it did a really good job in this chapter. Or not in this chapter, but just this entire part of like the will they, won't they of like Kaladin going into the army or not. Birdie. Sorry, I was reading a chat and I just spewed words. But yeah, I liked it. I thought it was cool. I thought it rode the line of interesting, not of frustrating. Also, just throwing in that like Syl has like the fucking sword and is like fighting off the death spread. Just threw that in there for good measure. No idea what that means. Don't even have like a beginning of a theory on why Syl had all that shit. But she did in chapter 38. I don't know. I paused and thought about it, and I was like, what could that even, like, mean? I have no idea. No clue. It's just, Syl just has a fucking sword, and she's, like, also, like, visible, but, I don't know. Maybe she was, like, maybe that goes somewhat into, like, maybe she just like wasn't a wind spren anymore. And so like that like goes into the whole like spren don't have like these inherent forms. They're just like, and so like things were changing. He was dying, but she was like, maybe she was like a Stormlight spren in that. I don't know. That was weird. Cool, but weird. Yeah, Teft knows way too much, intuits way too much. I said at this point he was part of a cult of, or the Devotaries or something. He was part of the Investitures, I think. No, Investitures? Whatever. Cult. Cool. Okay, Teft was in a cult. Very nice. Just straight up. No idea, how that'll play into things, but that's very similar to like Rock knowing about Spren and like being able to see Syl. Like Teft is going to know about Stormlight and like fucking, and he had the whole like why me, why him, like there's very clearly shit that we don't know about, but he is going to be the metaphysical like guide through his like Stormlight training is gonna be Teft. Chapter 40, I love Eyes of Red and Blue as a phrase. Sometimes like fantasy like curses and like new phrasing can just be like kind of dumb and lame. But I think that Brando Sando hits it out of the park pretty consistently. I think he bats a pretty high average. Later, bird. Later. I know you want mom to be home, but she's not. It's tough. She's out at brunch. But I thought Eyes of Red and Blue were really cool. And like, I don't know, felt right for like what they're meant to describe. I'm also really interested in like where Kaladin continues to go. At this point, he hadn't gone on the revolutionary beat yet. Or the, I guess, escape beat. But he's talking about like how he can't carry the Bridgeman alone. He's not strong enough. And I expected it to be within this part, but it didn't come. But I expect that there will be a metaphor at some point for the actual bridge. Of like, we're bridgemen. We don't carry the bridge alone. You don't need to carry all of us alone. Like, that sort of thing. I also thought there was a very interesting bit of like internal dialogue here of like the blood and the eyes, indicators of nobility. Was kind of interesting. Because again, I already have my whole theory about like the light eyes were originally because it was the people that could use Stormlight. They were the light eyes because their eyes literally like had Stormlight in them. Light eyes. And then the blood. The blood is so interesting. Him talking about like the colorfulness of the blood being hidden under the skin. And like we've talked in the past about the Parshendi blood and how like the Parshendi and the Great Shell blood like kind of mirrors the wine that they drink. And again, it's kind of like the Spren comment of like, the Spren, are there when things change, indicators of nobility, the blood and the eyes. Like it feels like it's something, but I can't quite place it, which is cool, especially as we are in part 4 or part 3, which I also realized part 5 is incredibly short. So I'll get to that at the end, but we'll talk about that. But like we're going into the conclusion of this book, but also this entire book is just the intro to a much wider series, a much longer series. So I feel like there are things that we're getting here that are setups that I think some of them will get paid off in like part 4 and part 5. But some might not even get paid off for a fucking while. Yeah. Also, and this is where like, things kind of started getting short. I maybe didn't take as many notes as I could have just because of the whole weirdness with timing on this one. But in chapter 41, I loved this realization of being able to kill. Like, that is like I don't want to say like a common trope, but kind of like, oh, main character like figures out that they are a killer, like they can kill. I feel like that sort of thing normally happens though in a situation where they have to kill someone. And it was kind of novel to see it in a way that made sense, but was also like long before Kaladin ever had to kill someone. Just like in this situation where he's watched his dad not do it, and his dad's like, I could have never done it. And Kaladin just like sitting there and being like, I would have just flicked the artery. Very cool. Very, very neat. This is in the prologue chapter, or not prologue, flashback, I guess, chapter where his dad could have killed Rashon. And Kaladin just like realizes like, oh yeah, I am a killer. Like I would have done it. Crazy. Very cool. Very interesting, very novel. I liked it a lot. Okay. 42. At this point, I was starting to nail down opinions on Shallan. And keep in mind, I'm still in my hater arc. I've got a little bit sympathetic to her even over the course of this stream, but at this point, I'm still very in my hater arc. It's weird because Shallan and Kaladin are both struggling with the morality of doing bad things in different ways and for different reasons. The problem, from my perspective at this point, is as follows. I like Kaladin. I like the Bridgemen. They've generally shown to be caring and even selfless when pushed. I want Kaladin to figure things out. I want to give him to give them respite. And I understand his struggle with wanting to save them, but not wanting to fuck over others. I don't particularly care for Shallan. I'm neutral on her at the best of times. And the only thing I know about her family is that her main brother likes to torture animals. She's actively fucking over Yasna, who took a chance on her just to save her and her brother's skins. It could be said that I guess she's being a bit selfless by being the one to undertake such a risk and like danger in the operation. But the fact that she's saving herself too and actively wants to be there undercuts the selflessness a lot. All in all, Kaladin is struggling against bad people, himself, and the world for the sake of others. Shallan is struggling against a relatively sympathetic Yasna and herself for herself and her creep family. So I think that's another way of like, you know, hey, Bird, no. No. I know that you're bored and that you want to go outside, but you can't just chew on furniture when you're bored. So I think like overall that is like one of the reasons that like it is hard. Like even if Kaladin was being as annoying, at least he would be like going towards something. Whereas I find it very hard to be sympathetic for Shallan. So even when like bad things are happening to her, I'm kind of like, meh. I don't know. She has not won me over in a way. The wavering perception of his father is really interesting in general. Oh, yeah. Like, going back and forth on, like, he is brave, he's not brave. I think Kaladin's whole home life is very interesting, especially because, like, it's such a classic of, like, you know, it's like the Disney syndrome of, like, the main characters don't have any parents, they don't have any family. And that's so interesting in reference to this book because family is one of like the driving motivations for like why the main characters are where they are is primarily because of family, not really because of what they wanted to do. In fact, that could be said very explicitly, not even like not really. They are both where they are in their situations because of their familial ties, not really because of anything else. Which is very interesting and like very cool from like a writing perspective. Like to compare it to again another Brando Sando book, Mistborn doesn't have any of that. Fucking Kelsier is not where he is because of his family, really. Like maybe Mare, kind of, but like that's the family you choose, right? And yeah, so it's just. All of it is very interesting in this book from that perspective. I think we all know Shallan. I think we also know Shallan believes her brothers were all really messed up because their father sucked. We get some implications of serious abuse from Shallan. Yeah, 1,000%. And I don't want to say that, like, I can't. I think the problem is that it's not like they are trying to do good shit. They are like trying to get themselves out of trouble. And I think that there's like a certain amount of empathy that you can draw there of like they're in a messed up situation, they're having to do messed up things. But I think that that is where like all of it ties together for Shallan for me is that the quandary for Shallan is do I do this bad? Do I fuck over Yasna, who has been pretty fucking kind to me, so that my family can continue to trick and defraud people and then eventually like fade into obscurity? Maybe. We'll see. I think I also kind of have doubt that they would ever like stop doing what their dad was doing. But maybe I'm wrong there. Or do I pursue my own personal ambitions and fuck over my family in the process? Like in both cases, Shallan is either being she's being selfish no matter what she does, which is I think where I have trouble empathizing is they've written Shallan into a situation where she doesn't even really have the choice to not be selfish. That's kind of the weird situation with Shallan's plot, is it's not even like she has like the selfless or selfish option category. They're just two different kinds of selfish, which is weird. Like, and like I can empathize and feel for her in that regard, but it's hard for me to like fully invest in that of like, yeah, I really want you to fuck over Yasna, or yeah, I really want you to like fuck over your brothers and your whole house, like, woo, because they have implied like that they've gone through so much like very serious abuse that it's like, oh, I don't want to see them get fucked over. So it's this weird, and like, you don't always have to provide like a morally just out for your characters. It can just be the best choice of a bad situation. But I also think that because all of them are characterized in kind of these unlikable ways, I don't even really care about them making like the best out of a bad situation, because like I don't really care if they get the best, I care way more about if Yasna gets the best. Like I care way more about like this working out in favor of Yasna as opposed to the Devars. So I think that's the kind of weird part for me about Shallan's whole setup and plot. Sure, we can definitely see a literal stealing to survive versus burning yourself to keep others warm drive dichotomy going on. Yeah. Which but I think that's the part, is it's like in like the steal to survive, it is very common for them to then humanize the people that you're stealing from, and for that to be the driving motivation. But also in most steal to survive storylines, we really want the people to survive. Like, I kind of want the Devars to survive, but like not really. And they've done such a good job at making Yasna sympathetic that like I kind of want Yasna to have the Soulcaster more. Like it's kind of like in a Steal to Survive, if you made the guild, the Thieves Guild that's stealing out to be real asshole prickheads, and then like the people that you're stealing from are like super cool and nice folks. It's kind of like, oh, I don't really want you to steal to survive. I kind of like prefer if you didn't do that. So it's this very, very odd situation. All of that is to say, I'm still very interested in it. Like, I really want to know what happened with her dad, with the Shardblade, with this real weird organization, the Symbol Heads. Like, there's so much interesting shit going on. But yeah, I just wish I liked Shallan more. I just really do. And I'm hoping that with the reveal that we got at the end, I will start to. Like, now that everything's on the table and, like, the deception quest line is kind of done, I'm hoping that I can get a more sympathetic tilt on Shallan. Anyways, 43. Girl, later. We'll go in just a second. I have actually I have quite a few chapters left. Fuck. The dog is the even when Paige is just gone, I think she might have to poop. She's normally not this insistent, so I think we're gonna have to do another bio break. Sorry about that, but you know, when dog's gotta go, she's gotta go. So I'll see you all later. It sounds like I'm ending stream. I'll be right back.
I want to leave my only one. There's more to do if we can only leave. The clock won't stop and this is what we get.
What's up? I'm glad I trusted my instincts. She took a fat shit. So glad I took her. What's up, everybody? All right. So, yeah, she's a good girl for asking. She got a treat because she was persistent and she wasn't fucking around. Okay. So, 43. With Spren being everywhere, it's really solidifying to me that they are ghosts or something. I'm also coming more and more and more and more to the conclusion that Syl is Tian. Like, I don't know how or why, but like with her talking about how she helped someone kill before and that it was right, and with past Kaladin becoming okay with murder, I think that Tian helped Cal kill someone, maybe Rashon, and gets dead in the process. Now, with what happens later, that theory is not as solid. But I still really feel like it's Tian. Especially because we see Syl in the prologue chapter in like chapter 51 or whatever. Or maybe like 49. And like it seems like Tian hadn't died too much before that. So I don't know. We'll see. So the investigators wanted to bring back the Knights Radiant, which means... Oh yeah, we also learned that the investigators wanted to bring back the Knights Radiant, which means that Teft is actually the connection between Kaladin and Dalinar. Right? Because I'm pretty sure that in Dalinar's retirement, he is going to be looking more into the Knights Radiant. And if he comes looking for the investitures, maybe he finds Teft way later on. Teft and Kaladin are still in contact, or maybe they're working together at this point. Like after Teft and Kaladin escape the Shattered Plains, like I very much foresee Kaladin and Dalinar getting connected through Teft. Oh yeah. 44, I think, I literally just wrote down, damn, that's so much sadder than I could have expected. I think this is when they get sent off to the army because Rashon, like, sends them. I'm pretty sure, at least. Let me check the chapter notes. But I think 45 is Shadesmar. No, 44. 44 is the Weeping, yes. Yeah, that's when they get sent off. Super sad. Holy shit. Very, very sad. Definitely could have helped Cal kill in the army, though. That's also true. And maybe that's how he got dead. Yeah, very, very possible. I still wonder if they're going to wind up in Dalinar's camp when trying to escape. Ooh, that's possible. Is that they escape Sadeas's camp and somehow wind up in Dalinar's. So maybe they don't even escape the Shattered Plains. And then Teft like quotes the Way of Kings of something or something, like just in passing, like when they're like, he's like, you know, he says like something like Kaladin and him like fucking hands up, and he's like, remember Kaladin, like life before death, or like journey before destination or something, and they're like about to like fucking chop their heads off, and Dalinar's like, wait, what? And then like Dalinar, and then Adolin's like, what? Father, they're deserters. We need to send them back to Sadeas. Blah, 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 blah. And Dalinar's like, no, hold. And yeah, that is super fair. Okay, Bird, no, fuck off now. I'm dating you twice in the past hour. Fuck off. But yeah, that's super duper fair. No matter how it happens, I am pretty sure now that Teft will be the connection. And maybe Teft is even from Dalinar's army originally, because Teft is a veteran, he said, before he got, turned into a bridgeman. Hi, Bird. Bird, do you want to say hello? Yes, hi. You say hello. Doggy, hi. But, yeah, I don't know. Also, like, okay, the like we're talking about like the singing like that they in 45 in the intro that I think is like Yasna's logs and notes. They talk about how like they can like sing like the same tune like way far away. They definitely have telepathy. It's just so clear and obvious at this point. The Parshmen and Parshendi and the Parsh people have have telepathy. They just have telepathy. It's just how it is. Birdie baby. Birdie baby. Hi. Also interesting, in 45, Capsule drops the word Cosmere, which is kind of interesting that they're like, I don't know what they, think or assume the Cosmere is in general, but they are at least aware of the word, which is a cross series term. Like that's in Mistborn, and like the whole thing is the Cosmere. And the devotaries, at least, are like tacitly aware of the Cosmere, which is interesting. Also, my current theory. Well, actually, no. So they kind of confirmed that when Shallan went into the alternate world, that she was inside of the goblet, right? Or she was talking to the goblet or something. And it's like there was the sea of beads and the flames in the sky. My theory is that those were like atoms. Like that she was like seeing, the atomic structure, or at least an abstraction of the atomic structure. And that she was talking to the spread inside the goblet, and she convinced it to change. And it was like, oh yeah, I've changed before. And then she soulcast, So it's very interesting. I don't know, and so that's my general theory. Is like the glass beads are like maybe like the protons and the neutrons, and then the flames in the sky are the electrons, something like that. Or at least in that vein, And she was talking to the Spren. I don't know. It was again very interesting, but we don't have a ton of context yet. For exactly, I don't feel like we have enough context and enough evidence to like really dive in, figuratively, into like what that could have even been, But very interesting, and especially like in relation to the Spren, of like the Spren appear when things change, soul casting changes things. The thing in the goblet was like, I've changed before, I can change again. Like it all seems very connected. Very connected. Seems like just an in-fiction word replacement for Cosmos. I think you're right, but it is also a cross-planetary thing, which is kind of interesting. I definitely think she was speaking to the Spren of the Goblet. Yeah, no clue yet what the symbology or world she was in. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely like, there is clearly so much more going on. And, like, the fact that she did it without actually using the Soulcaster, it seems. Like, there's clearly so much more going on, but I don't feel like we have enough context yet to really dive into it. 46 is where Kaladin was, like, riding the storm, and it seems like he is getting the same sort of madness as Dalinar. And I'm even wondering if in the future, maybe during their escape attempt or maybe during some other time, that Dalinar and Kaladin might meet during a vision during the High Storm. So, like, they will, like, be placed in the same vision, and they'll, like, realize, and they'll, like, have to try to find each other afterwards. And then Kaladin's gonna be like, wait, you're a Light Eyes? Maybe that's what guides them to Dalinar's camp later? I don't know, but definitely interesting. Maybe the Almighty is like recruiting like, I don't know, like anti-war people. Whatever the storm was, like the thing that talked to him during the dream mentioned Odium. Odium freaks the fuck out of Syl. I don't know. And she seems to have activated it by trying to summon a blade. Oh, you're right, Hans. That it does seem like it actually happened when she went to summon her blade. I didn't even think of that. I wonder if that's coincidental or actually connected, but that is really interesting. Um, that would be cool for them to like meet in the dream. I think that would be cool too. I am this Odium is potentially like the villain of part 4/5. Maybe setting up a later villain for later down the line. Maybe Odium is the thing that is trying to bring back the Voidbringers. I don't know. We got a lot of things kind of dropped in this chapter. Of like, it felt like chapter 1 dropped a lot of stuff. Chapter 2 kind of wrapped a lot of it up, or not chapter, part. And then part 3, I think, is dropping a lot of stuff that part 4 will wrap up. So I'm curious to see all that. Also in this chapter, we got the Parshman Bridgman, which I thought was super well timed. Like, it felt like we were starting to stagnate a little bit with, like, getting a lot of things introduced, but not really having a lot to, like, anchor us to any given thing. Like, there wasn't, like, a lot to grasp onto, you know? And I think that the Parshman getting added to the bridge crew right at this point is a very neat opportunity to, like, explore this thing that has been a huge plot point of like the Parshman and the Parshendi in a new way. Like, it wouldn't make sense for us to like interact with Parshendi at this point, but it does make a lot of sense for us to interact with a Parshman. Very, very, very well timed, I thought. I feel so bad for Shen. I mean, I feel bad for ostensibly all Parshmen. They're a slave race. But, I mean, it seems like Shen is probably going to get treated generally better in the bridge crew by Kaladin than he would anywhere else. So it seems like he's probably all right. Syl also commented on not liking who Cal is when he thinks about Light Eyes, and I suspect that may have been more literal than it's supposed to seem. Like, maybe there's something actually changing him. Potentially this Odium type deal. And this all and I wrote down like maybe the concept of like anti-war. Like maybe Odium also is like the source of the thrill that Dalinar and Adolin talked about. Because the Almighty was like seeking, it seemed to shock him out of the thrill during Dalinar's chapters in part 2. And so I'm wondering if the Almighty or the Stormfather or whatever is potentially like seeking to like recruit people that are maybe like not predisposed to Odium, like have some sort of like way out, if that makes sense. And it was also talking about how like there's more war in the East than the West, or maybe vice versa, more in the West than the East. And like every time Szeth talks about like walking on stone or like these foreigners and like, you know, his curse to be an assassin, I'm wondering if the Shin maybe know a little bit more about Odium, like they still follow the old ways, and like maybe Odium is like the Night Watcher. I don't know. There's a lot that's going on here that is pointing me in a lot of different directions. That like there is this force that is opposing the Almighty and that seems to be related to the Voidbringers. And now we're getting this name that has like a very visceral effect on Syl, that it would feel weird if it wasn't related to all that other stuff, but we don't quite know enough yet for me to really grasp onto it or make like any like big reads or predictions. It's a really good point about Syl though, Hans. Yeah, I don't know. Also, dude, telepathy confirmed. Teft being like, they seem to be able to talk to each other without making any sounds. Yeah, like, telepathy absolutely confirmed at this point, right? Like, the Parsh people just are telepathic. I won't accept, like, almost any other explanation for it. Because, like, it's so clear to my brain at this point. Also the description of Sigzil as a world singer, right? That might have been, yeah. I think that might have been during 46, which like I don't know. That was interesting, but I didn't get any. I didn't get any. That just seemed like a cool bit of characterization. Kind of like I really like so far at least the characterization of like the Azish people. Um, like I thought that was very cool. Um, but I don't know. Are you saying that it ties into anything else, or you just say it's cool? Because I do think it's cool. Yeah, they're telepathic. Just maybe with other steps. Maybe other steps. Yeah, like maybe some caveats put on it, but like 1,000%, 1,000,000,000% they're telepathic. So yeah. 47 is where the Kaladin Shardblade incident happens, and we get confirmed that Syl was definitely there. And I thought this was great, but only for like contextual reasons. And I think without those contextual reasons, that scene could have been bad. Oh wait. Well, Rock explains what he thinks they are, but aren't we also told that world singers were the opposite of void bringers and a type of Spren from the Almighty? Huh? Were we? I don't remember that at all. I do. I kind of remember what you're talking about, like the Spren from the Almighty. I remember that. Were those the same word, the world singers? I do not remember those being the same term, but I can't remember the term that they used for the Almighty Spren thing. If that's the same word, that is very interesting. I would have to go back and like reread that. Interesting. Probably will lurk a while making bread. Want to say hi. Hey, what's up, Farah? How you doing? I think Kabzal told Shallan that. I'll have to go back and like listen to the Kabzal chapter to confirm the wording. I thought it was a different term, but if that's the same term, that is extremely relevant. I don't recall that either. Also, hello, what's up, Grimvane? How you doing? That's incredibly interesting, Hans. I'll have to go back after stream and try to find that, because that is, I do remember the thing, like the conversation that you're talking about with Kabzal, but I don't remember them being called world singers. But I will certainly look into that. Okay, so the Shardblade. Okay, so these are my notes. Kaladin turning down the Shardblade runs the risk of feeling very, 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 very contrived. However, I think it is saved in this case by us getting repeated assertions from Szeth about how much having a Shardblade sucks. Like, it's one of the very first times we ever see modern Shardblades is when Szeth calls it a curse. And I think that prefacing, like, even though we then have Adolin and Dalinar and, like, all of these other instances and incarnations of Shardblades, that is how Shardblades were introduced to us, as not a good thing. And then we also have Shallan, who calls it a curse and, like, the worst thing she's ever done and the fruits of her terrible sin and blah, 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 blah. Like, we get all of these descriptions from POV characters of them fucking hating their Shardblades. So I think that, like, without all of that, him turning down the Shardblade is kind of like fucking righteous little, like, moral grandstanding dickhead doesn't want ultimate power. Great, good for you, Kaladin. But with all of that context, it wraps back around to this being like, damn, like, yeah, like, good for Kaladin. Like, he sees through it. He understands that these Shardblades are, like, a trap and a curse. And, like, it goes from feeling, like, weird high roady to feeling very, like, oh, yeah, like, he gets it. So I just thought it was so cool. I thought it was really a good representation of like the fruits of your narrative labor of like setting all of this up with your description of the shard blades up to this point to make this moment feel good rather than bad like it could have. From the wiki, potential spoilers? I don't know. World singers travel from kingdoms of Roshar, telling other stories of various lands and peoples in order to fulfill the holy charge they believe has been handed down from the heralds to foster peace and understanding. We'll see. I just checked my notes. The Spren from the Almighty were called Dawn Singers, not World Singers. I mean, okay. That's still very that's I actually do still think that is a point to consider about the singing. Like with the songs with the Parshendi, Dawn Singers, World Singers, the concept of this music seems to be a common thread here. Now it might just be thematic and it might just, be kind of generally symbolic. But Sigzil explains World Singers. Yeah. No, I just saw from the wiki and I was like, oh, I hope there's not any like future things about World Singers in there. But the singing part of that, the Dawn Singers, the World Singers, the Parshendi music, like again, it could just be thematic, but there's also the concept of these vibration patterns that Kabzul mentions about like when you make these certain frequencies, these certain notes, that the sand forms into the pattern of the cities. So there seems to be something more with like the sounds and the music that could potentially be like another source of power. Oh my god, I just forgot the Soulcaster. There was the only thing that Shallan could ever find about the Soulcasters were that humming can make them work. So there's something going on there. Like, even if that connection isn't exactly what you thought it was, Hans, there's definitely something there with the singing stuff. I thought Rock described World Singers and Sigzil clammed up. Maybe it was a bit of both. I don't remember. Sigzil did clam up and walk away, but maybe then they talked about it later. I don't know. Didn't you say last time that there could be a strat to take down a shard bearer? Cal not taking it could pay off later. Yeah. I mean, it's very clear that like most of the shard bearers do appear to have like a lot of like hubris about their abilities, but also the fact that shard blades like fucking disappear after you drop them is like a big downside to them. Even though otherwise they're very, very powerful. So it could be very much a thing where, like, yeah, Kaladin later manages to disarm a shard bearer, his shard blade goes away, and then Kaladin wins. And, like, maybe they both get disarmed, but, Kaladin's spear is still there, and maybe he can, like, lash it back to himself or something, but the shard blade disappears. Very, very much might be a thing in the future, yeah. Humming helps, yeah. Lots of resonance stuff. Yeah, lots of resonance stuff. Which is very interesting. And again, like, there's a lot of connection there, like a lot of connecting lines, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to take from it yet, But it's very interesting. Okay, so again, I'm still in my hater arc. If I wasn't already so down on Shallan, I would probably compliment the reasoning behind Shallan not being able to consult Yasna about the symbol heads. I'm sure they have absolutely nothing to do with soul casting. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm kind of thinking that they don't, honestly. But it's a reasonable concern/fear for Shallan to have. Like, that was a very good device for why Shallan can't talk to Yasna about the symbol heads. But also, I'm down on Shallan, so meh. Yeah. Also, holy shit, Yasna's a fucking savage. And I wrote down the quote, when her and Kabzul and Shallan are all talking in the hospital, and Yasna goes, "I'm sorry I drove you to suicide, so here's some jam." Damn. Also, okay, Capsule fucking poisoned her. Ah. I said that this was almost to me like the opposite of a Deus Ex Machina. Like, it's a very random and like very minorly foreshadowed event that comes in to get characters on the same page. Like, it's kind of weird, but I will also admit to being very intrigued. So I can't fault it. And like the fact that Capsule was like a poisoner assassin does like it tracks in that sort of way where like yeah, it retroactively makes sense. But I think if I had thought about it beforehand of like yeah, is Capsule trying to kill Yasna? I could have reconstructed this, but I don't think it was foreshadowed to a degree where like I don't think you would have ever gotten there, like naturally. And even if you had, it would have been equally as possible that that's not what was going on. Like him hiding from the Ardents in the garden, that is the most explicit part of like, yeah, he's not actually in with the other Ardents. But also, he gave like a very reasonable explanation for it that didn't seem sus at all from Shallan's perspective. So yeah, I don't know. That was, but also it did make sense in retrospect, which is all it needs to do, and it was very interesting. I thought. No, I suspected Capsule of something, but not assassin. Yeah, I did too. I thought, especially once we got their conversation in the garden, I thought he was going to like bring Shallan in or on a deeper plot. But I wasn't on the like assassin beat, you know? Like Capsule was definitely sus, but I really did not expect the assassin bit. But again, in retrospect, it makes sense, and it was super interesting. Like, so I don't want to like downplay it at all. It's almost to highlight that like foreshadowing is important up to a point. And as long as you have not foreshadowed things that like actively contradict what you introduce later, as long as the thing you introduce is interesting enough, it kind of doesn't matter. Is I guess more what I'm trying to hit here. I thought, yeah, like I said at the end of that, I'm interested. I was super interested in that. Also in 49, I took one single note that Kaladin says. It was just a tale, but every tale came from somewhere. That right there, that sentence just sums up Yasna's like entire motivation. Obviously not meant to apply to Yasna in that moment, or maybe it was, I don't know. But yeah, very much like, oh yeah, that's Yasna's whole deal. That is Yasna's entire shtick. Is like, yeah, it's just a tale, but every tale came from somewhere. Seems like someone trying as hard as Capsule turned out to be trying, probably could have come up with an easier way, giving his chemical access and access to Yasna's rooms, but meh. Yeah, and that's kind of where I call it, like, it is very interesting. But it definitely, for what he was doing, even in retrospect, it doesn't feel like that was like it wasn't like if you had like seen him fucking around in Yasna's room, right? Like if it had been him instead of the maid, that would have drawn more suspicion to like maybe he was trying to do something like that. And maybe, here's the thing, Yasna is unreliable in terms of like telling the truth. Shallan is unreliable. Maybe Capsule wasn't an assassin. Like maybe Yasna was trying to kill Capsule. Maybe it was totally unrelated. Like who knows how the backbreaker powder got in there and the antidote. Like that could have been the case. But like even the thing that Yasna uses to prove this to us is like, yeah, that's why he was so eager to get you to eat the jam, is because it had the antidote and he knew that. And he probably just used more this time. So when I say that like I'm interested in this, I'm interested to see if there's anything else with it. Because one part of me, like this secret died with Capsule. He's dead. So, but it was also an off-screen death, which we all know not to trust. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure that we're done with Capsule and especially because the chapter was named Backbreaker Powder. Like this was foreshadowed that something like this could have happened or might have occurred, but the actual details feel just a tiny bit off to me. And that could just be a thing. We might just never come back to the assassination attempt. We might never come back to Capsule. But like the whole maid being in Yasna's rooms, like Capsule being willing to leave the Ardentia, like maybe he was just trying to keep Shallan in like Flynn while she was there, and he knew she was about to leave, so he got desperate, but there's just something that feels a tiny bit off, and you know, sometimes I would be willing to say like, oh, that just is like bad writing, but I don't know. I'm a little bit more suspicious of it. As like in like a good way. Like I don't feel like it's it, you know? I don't know. Seems like someone. Oh wait. In fairness, he didn't appear to be very skilled or experienced as an assassin. Was he coerced into taking her out? Perhaps. Very much perhaps, because he did very much specify that his superiors, which I think he might have called them legitimately his superiors, not even people in the Devotery. Like his superior. I don't think he called them like other Ardents, so maybe he wasn't an Ardent to begin with. He did mention his superiors like didn't want him to steal the Soulcaster because it was too risky. So maybe instead his superiors said, "Hey, you know, take her out." Like that's very possible. I don't know. Maybe he was trying to pin the whole thing on Shallan. That doesn't really. I don't know. Capsule knew to take the bad jam, yeah. Though there could be more, Yasna could have figured him out already and neutralized the antidote or something. Very possible. And then, because like Yasna jumps straight into action. She immediately says, "It's poison. I'm gonna have to soulcast your blood." Just fucking instant. So it could be that in this case, Yasna had figured him out, or maybe she hadn't, and Yasna plants the poison? I don't know. It feels like there's something there. Didn't we find out Capsule wasn't even a real Ardent? I don't think that's the case. It was just that the other Ardents around weren't super familiar with him. But I do think it's implied that he's not like super that he's like not like super like in with I don't know. I got the impression that he still was a real Ardent, just like maybe like from somewhere else. That was the impression I got, but I could be wrong. Maybe I extrapolate that the other Ardents having seen him around but not really knowing him. It's very possible. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is there feels like something more here that we're missing because Shallan is missing it. But I can't quite pin down what that might be. And it also feels like it might be an excuse for Shallan to then like blackmail Yasna, where Shallan figures out that like actually Yasna fucking killed this guy. Or maybe, you know, something else is going on. And so she says, hey, you know, you got to teach me how to soulcast. And now we move into a new arc where she stays with Yasna, but Yasna's all pissy at her. And she doesn't go home. But she's like learning the soulcaster, so we like learn how that magic works. But that feels like something that we may not go into with this little left of the book, like rolling into the climax of the book. It doesn't feel like now is the time to start learning the magic system, you know? I don't know. I can't shake the feeling that there is something I am missing about Kabzal and this assassination attempt, but I can't put my finger on what it is. Maybe his true superiors were trying to pin it on the Ardents. Very possible. Yeah. But it's also weird that he died, right? Because they taught because the explanation for him dying is that the antidote didn't work because he used too much, which is definitely possible. I don't know. And she did really draw a lot of attention to the Thaylen bread in the past, about like how like great it was and how fluffy, it's almost like cake. You know, now that I think about that, she always described how much she loved the Thaylen bread in the past, right? She was like, "Oh, this Thaylen bread is so sick, so dope as fuck." Did she talk about that at all in the assassination attempt in chapter whatever? Did she talk about like the bread like being worse or the same or different? Because that could speak to something. I don't know. For some reason, I am still suspicious of Kabzal in general. But I kind of feel like he didn't try to kill them. I feel like he wasn't an assassin in this scene. I don't know. It could be I'm misreading things. It could be, it's not that deep. He just is that, but I don't know. Yeah, something going on there. And then 51 was, the Amaram killing all of the squad members and branding Kaladin with a slave brand. And honestly, I don't know. I thought it was kind of a weak ending in comparison to the other ones. Still good, still solid. But, like, the last two endings, I feel like of each other part were, like, fucking bangers that just dropped absolute bombs on us. And, like, nothing about the Amaram chapter of 51. I mean, the Shashnan, I think, was the name. It was all interesting. It, like, solidified, like, why Kaladin is the way he is. Like, kind of fills in gaps in our knowledge. But it didn't do or introduce me to anything that was like that insane. Like, obviously Amaram was like gonna do something because he hates Amaram now. So it's like, I don't know. I thought it was fine. I guess the crazy ending was like the Backbreaker powder, right? Also Backbreaker powder. Interesting name. Again, don't really know what to do with it, but it seems not random. Right, like it doesn't seem like something that is just like chosen at random. It's like backbreaker powder. I don't know. Yeah, and that whole sequence was pretty wild. Maybe I would have like reversed them, like put the Amaram stuff and then the backbreaker powder. I don't know. But in general, cool part. Very cool part. I'm loving the evolution of Kaladin and the Bridgemen. I do find the developments in Shallan's plot interesting, even if I am a little sour on her and her like inner monologue. But it's still cool. It was still a very, very cool chapter. Very, very cool or part overall. And I am incredibly pumped for the end of this book. I'm incredibly pumped. That betrayal from Amaram was compelling to me. Yeah, nothing jaw-dropping considering what we know now, but quite the character turn. I might have okay. And this is I want to be really clear. Like, I think the ending was very good. I just didn't think it was like as good as like Dalinar abdicating, right? I wasn't quite as like enthralled as at the end of part 2. But yeah, really cool character work, especially with like Amaram feeling guilty and all that. Like, very interesting there. And I think I might have been more interested if Amaram was a character. Like if Amaram was like at Dalinar's camp and Kaladin just didn't know. Cuz like to me that wasn't that like revolutionary about Amaram. It's like we had only gotten the information that Amaram is such a stand-up dude from past Kaladin, but in future we know that now Kaladin changed his mind. So I was always kind of waiting for Amaram to do the dickhead thing. I think it was presented very nicely, but it wasn't like none of it surprised me. I do think it was very well not nuanced, but very I'm looking for a word that's like well executed, but is like it had like a deft touch of like how he presented that, of how Brandon Sanderson presented it. But yeah, it was a solid, and maybe that is also just by function of this being kind of the middle of the book, is we're kind of leading up to the really big things. We're kind of tying up loose ends before the massive end of book shit, So maybe that also might be a function of that. Human greed tends to be more predictable than turning your back on ultimate power. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. But yeah. So I mean overall, very, very cool part. Set up a lot of cool stuff. I'm so psyched for part 4. Speaking of, so part 5 seems to be very short. Let me go back and look at it again, but part 4 seems to be similarly thick to part 3, but part 5 is pretty short. So, I have a pitch. And then we have the epilogue and the end note and the Ars Arcanum and whatever. I have a pitch. I already want to get full episode Fridays and book club on opposite weeks, because right now, they're on the same week, which is just a lot for the voice. So I already wanted to get them on opposite weeks. I think that we should read parts 4 and 5. Basically, finish the book, but take 3 weeks instead. So normally it's every other week. We'll make an exception this week. We'll push it 3 weeks so that we can get the schedule where I want it, and we'll just read the entire book. Because it would be weird to, we would have to schedule, a shorter book club anyways for part 5. So let's just put it all into one, take 3 weeks, and then be good for there. Very psyched for the rest of the book, for those two. Hell yeah. Part 5 is very short. Cool. Okay. I'll make an announcement about that. And if anyone's majorly against that, we'll see about potential other options. But I think that will be the best option for this specific thing. So that would place next book club, and I'll edit the Discord event as well. But that would place the next book club on Sunday the 4th. So the 4th of February. It'll be a long one, but I'm good with that. Yeah. I think it'll be a long one too. Which will also, again, help because my voice is already kind of struggling from full episode Friday. So, giving it a nice little week of separation will be good. Cool. All right. Well, we will do that. And I think that's about it for this book club. I mean, I do think that in general, I was a little bit less diligent on my note-taking, again, mostly because of the situation around the time period over which I read this. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to be more, in-depth on the note-taking a little bit more, and be able to think about the book a little bit more for this next part, especially because it's the end. And yeah, I'm really excited. And I'll also tell you guys right now, I'm planning, unless the end of the book fucking sucks, which I don't think it will, I'm planning on trucking straight into Words of Radiance. So get ready for that. I think we'll keep on a 2-week schedule, especially after we get this schedule worked out. So get ready. Though it was nice to catch you all 2 days in a row. Very happy to catch you all in the VODs with the altered schedule. Hell yeah. I'm and that is another reason I want to have them kind of on separate days is with the altered schedule. Then at least once a week, I have a Europe friendly stream. So yeah, but it was super cool to catch all of the European time zone folks. So yeah, I guess with that also I will be at some point putting book club on the YouTube podcasts, so you will be able to listen to book club audio only, but like in like a background player in YouTube Music. Once I do that, I need cover art for it first, and I'm gonna do that with book club and Critical Eyes, and I've already done that with Behind the Screens. So all of those you can listen audio only on YouTube Music, and you can even subscribe to the podcast. So like on YouTube Music, it'll show you when it comes up. So yeah, so that's all happening, and I am very tired. Stayed up too late last night. My own fault, and I'm gonna go eat something and take a nap. But it was super cool hanging out with you guys today. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for Critical Eyes, first half of the episode. And I will see you all in the Discord. Goodbye.